Good afternoon. I'm Dara Bunjon. I am the food enthusiast here at Draymore Living. I'm a food writer, food stylist, PR maven, and a frustrated baker. Those of you joining us live, drop your comments and questions for my guest or myself into the comment box, and I will check from time to time. You'll see me turn my head. My guest today is Chef Michael Gettier, who was the Restaurant Association of Maryland's 2009 Chef of the Year. In 1992, Michael was the executive chef at the Conservatory Restaurant atop the Peabody Court Hotel in Baltimore's Art District, Mount Vernon, and it helped give gravitas to Baltimore's food scene after being named one of the best hotel chefs in the U.S. by the James Beard Foundation. He studied in France at La Varenne. His restaurants were M. Gettier on Broadway and M. Gettier Orchard Inn. He then went on to be executive chef at the acclaimed and exclusive Antrim 1844 Inn in Taneytown. We're going to do a bit of time travel today. We're going to go back to the burgeoning 90s and the aughts in the culinary scene with Michael. So let's bring Michael in.
Hi, Dara.
Hi, Michael. Hey, Toots. How you doing?
Doing great. How about yourself?
I'm doing great catching up with you. We have so much history together and so thrilled that you would get up early in the morning out there in Santa Barbara and join the conversation here. Other than doing the show today, what else is on your calendar to do?
Today, probably working out a little bit later, maybe heading down the beach. Um, we're probably going to do a wine tasting at a Au Bon Clément later this evening, and then come back for dinner.
Well, that sounds like a well-filled day and finished off with wine, and then you can, at our age, nap out at 9 p.m. It's like me,
And
right?
that's optimistic.
Uh, you know, we have a lot of history together, but since you're being on, I go back and, just try to refresh my memory about different things about you. Now, I know you went to St. Paul's School here in Baltimore,
hmm hmm
and I know you went to La Varenne in France, but
hmm
I don't know what happened in between and how you even got into cooking and how you got to La Varenne. So if you could fill us in.
Sure. After college, I got a little antsy, and I decided I wanted to do something. So I had bought a motorcycle there, and I hopped on a motorcycle heading to the West Coast, and planning on doing something in California. Not really sure what, but I got caught up in Colorado in a ski town, Steamboat Springs, because it was winter, and I was on motorcycle, so I had to kind of stop for the winter. And it turned out I got a job in a restaurant, and I started skiing, and then somehow cooking became more important than skiing, and that's when I decided to go overseas to culinary school. So I figured at the time, I don't know if you remember way back then in the mid 80s, if one cooked good food, one essentially cooked French food.
Right.
So I decided to go to the source, and that's what landed me in Paris for the culinary school. Because I figured if that was where it was happening, and at the time I was correct. So
That's right. And La Varenne, I think, still exists today, doesn't it?
no, she actually Anne Willan moved to Burgundy about 10 years after I got out in '84. And in the early '90s, she owned a chateau down in Burgundy. So she moved the operation down there. And then she's passed away since, but she was there for, I don't know, 10 years or so. And then she closed it up and retired.
Yeah. A lot of great chefs have come out of there, and
Mhm,
Stephen Reichlin went there, and
mhm.
he all the cookbooks that he's done. Um,
Jonathan Waxman out of New York went there. James Beard,
yeah,
it's interesting. James Beard held Lover reunion dinner back
Oh,
in the
really?
yeah, and there were about 5 or 6 chefs. I think I was the small fish in the small pond chef, but Jonathan Waxman from New York and a chef from Arizona was there, and Gail Gand went to La Varenne, the famous
Chicago.
Chicago. She was there, um, and we had a great dinner. Yeah, it was fabulous.
The you you bring that up, and Jonathan Waxman is. I digress. Long story short, I got an invitation to go to New York for lunch because Fergus Henderson, the email came from England to come join him at lunch at Jonathan Waxman's restaurant that he was going to be in New York.
Mm.
Somehow or another, I was on some great list. So I hopped Megabus, went up. But Jonathan Waxman is known for his roast chicken. So even though they were tasting all of Fergus Henderson's nose to tail, I was sitting at the bar and some
Great
guy sat
football.
next to me, and he somehow or another supplied them, was a farmer or whatever, and he wanted to taste everything Fergus Henderson was doing. So I shared the chicken, he shared everything else. It was, I mean, the Zagat's were there, April Bloomfeld was there, David
Wow.
Cowan, and me. I don't know
That,
how I ended up there, but it was great. Um,
well,
I
during
Go ahead.
I was going to say during the dinner, I have to share this. I was quite nervous, because all these luminaries, and we were passing plates, and each chef, of course, had his little thing to do on the plate, and we're passing plates, passing plates. I'm doing my little thing, and before Chef Waxman was right next to me, and before he had finished his thing on the plate, just out of tension, I slid his plate down in front of me to do my thing. And I realized what I had done, and I looked at him, and he gave me the the steeliest eye. I sort of slid the plate back. Oh, I was very nervous during that dinner.
Well, I think you had another big dinner when you were at Peabody Court. What was it? It was a fundraiser for the American Cancer Society. It was a $200 a plate dinner, and that was back in
Oh,
the 90s.
that was with
And
yeah,
from
the
Tele,
maker. I forget the guy's name.
the owner of Televent. Is it
Oh,
Televent?
Taiwan. Yeah, that's right.
Televent.
Taiwan. That was a very yeah. He came over again. Somehow our name got on the list, like you were saying, and they decided to do their single. They were bringing out their line of champagne, their rosé champagne, and they decided to do their single United States publicity dinner at the Peabody Court. So the chef came in 3 days ahead of time, and he spoke no English. But we had a great time cooking for 3 days, doing the dinner. Um, I forget the lady's name that came down from New York, the New York restaurant critic. She was down. She spent 3 days with us. Yeah, that was an exciting affair. Again, I was just a young pup of a chef, but
I think you had only been at Peabody Court for about 6 months or so.
yeah,
And to let people know that this restaurant was France's Michelin three-star restaurant. It was la creme de la creme.
yeah, Taiwan. It's been very famous for many, many, many years. Still is.
Yeah. And I was reading the New York Times issue
Hmm.
and catching up. And interestingly enough, the only thing he didn't have was pistachio paste. And all I can do when I read that, I went to buy chocolate.
You know how he brought the pistachio paste in?
No,
Did the article mention it?
I
He
it was
knew
the
we did. Oh, he knew we didn't have pistachio paste. So, and this is a dark green paste. And he took about a 2 pound chunk, like a kilogram chunk, and wrapped it and stuck it in a shoe. Now, the funny thing is, this pistachio paste has an eerie resemblance to explosives, you see. And he stuck it in a shoe and packed it in a suitcase, hoping that it wouldn't get caught because it was quite an illegal move. But it made it in, and that was for his
Yeah.
pistachio sauce for the chocolate marquise.
And who was it? Nick, it's a short and long story. Nick Maggieri came in from New York a couple weeks ago to have crab cake, a specific crab cake. Took the train in, and we were somehow or another we were at a grocery store. He wanted to pick up fresh crab meat to take to New York, and the Dubai bars were there. And we start talking about it. He went into this whole history about how Sicily and the pistachios, these are before they form the skin and how different that is from what we think it is. So another divergence. We're here to talk about you, not pistachios. Sorry about that. So let's see. Blah, blah, blah. So tell me about your family table. Was growing up, was food important at your family table or nondescript or what?
No, mom was a pretty good cook, but she had a great outlook on it. I remember one time we were supposed to have dumplings, and I think the water was boiling too much, and the dumplings totally dissipated. So we wound up having flour soup. And we were okay with it. It was like, "Oh, well, that's the way it goes."
We
I'm
have to eat something.
yeah, I'm afraid I didn't quite have that jocularity in the kitchen that mom had the had the humor to have. But, yeah, we she cooked most dinners, we ate home cooking most of the time. And though she wasn't an adventuresome cook, she was a very solid cook. So, yeah.
Look, she cooked. You know,
Right.
I don't imagine, I don't know what life would have been like if I had had children and growing up and doing things and putting food on the table. Um, which brings me to your wife, Claudia, who is a pastry chef. I forgot, how did the two of you meet?
Um, I was chef at a small restaurant called Brasserie de Paris. It was actually my very first chef's position as like the head chef, baby head chef. And she got hired as a prep cook. And she's from Peru. And the maitre d' at the time was helping her get her green card. And
Right?
one thing led to another, and she asked me out. Well, I was too intimidated. This is a true story, Derek. We
Okay.
had chatted about going to a wine tasting, the wine tasting out in Westminster, and she was about to leave the day before the tasting. Like her shift was over, and I was, staying the rest of the night, and I just couldn't get up the courage to mention the wine tasting. I just couldn't. I was too intimidated. And then finally, before she left, she turned and said, "Are we going to that wine tasting or what?" And one thing led to another. And yeah, that was
Well, yeah, yeah. Um, what took you, you're now living in Santa Barbara.
yeah.
What took you to the West Coast?
Um, to be honest, we had always thought about maybe retiring in maybe Lewis, Delaware, or someplace like that. My good friend Steve Deckelbaum, who you know from Cisco,
Right?
he has a place down in Lewis, and we had always talked about that. And we had vacationed for a couple years down at Lewis. So we kind of thought about that. But then, just for grins, one year in 2019, we flew to the West Coast and rented a car in San Diego and drove up to Petaluma, which is north of San Francisco, and stopped at various towns along the way. And Santa Barbara was one of them. And the next thing you know, we were talking about moving to Santa Barbara, and that was 2019. And then COVID happened, of course, and I had retired in 2017. Claudia was still working. So we flew out here a couple of times and we commissioned a real estate agent and we basically bought a house kind of sight unseen and moved out here. And there you go.
How old was your daughter then?
Oh, they had all moved. When we moved out here, our daughter, who was 24 at the time, decided to move to Denver. So we caravanned in two cars. Our daughter drove one, and us with the dogs drove the other. And we drove her to Denver, and we stopped there for a day or so. And then Claudia and I continued on to Santa Barbara here. So I have a daughter in Denver, a son in Fort Worth, and we're in Santa Barbara.
Well, thank God for Zoom, right?
Yeah, and it's funny because we don't, at this point, we don't even have any family in Baltimore anymore. And, we were looking at uh, our Fells Point location on Google Maps the other day, and I'm afraid the area north of the Broadway markets hasn't fared as well as the area south of the Broadway markets there, because we were the
It's,
next block north.
yeah, M. Gettier on Broadway. I remember where it was. It's very touchy down there, though. I had mentioned I went down to talking about the 90s in Baltimore and the people that all started out around the same time. I'd gone down to see Nancy Longo at Pier Point.
Mhm.
So for folks, Nancy, I, and Michael, there's a picture floating around on Facebook working the Catholic Charities fundraiser. And I think I did it one year with Gina Troya.
Oh, that's
So
right. Gino showed up a couple of years.
yeah, he
Yeah, we did
he
it all together a couple of years.
I know I did it a couple years, but she's in Fells Point and hanging on. Um, and just to tell people, because we're going to help promote, Nancy Longo's restaurant is Pier Point Restaurant on Alisana Street. She has coming up her dim sum number 7 dinner coming up on November 21st at 6:30 p.m. It's $65 per person, and that includes tip, and it's only 22 people. If you're interested, reach out to me. I'll get you the details. I've done so many of her dim sum. It's great fun. So reach out on that. As to somebody else, Joe Lurch, that goes back, the wine
Oh,
guy.
yeah.
Okay. So in 2 weeks,
You
Joe
know,
Lurch,
Joe Lurch, their old salesman from Reliable
right?
Liquor. Yeah.
He has like a wine bar in Havre Grace, but he has written a book with Mark Robinson. They're both part of the Wine Matrix, and it's The Art of Spice and Wine Pairing, Simple Recipes to Enjoy Every Day. The reason I bring this up is they sent me a PDF of the cookbook, and I'm going through it. In Joe's acknowledgement, he acknowledges you.
Oh, no
He
kidding.
says, I acknowledge Michael Gettier, an old friend who taught me how awesome French cuisine can be. So I
Oh,
just thought I'd point that out to you.
yeah. Joe was crazy. When we had, can I interrupt for just a sec?
Sure, go. This is
We
just
had our
us.
when we had our first tasting down at M. Gettier Restaurant. He was with Reliable Liquors, and they wanted to capture most of our wine list, and they brought in 45 wines for us to taste. 45.
3 sheets, were you?
Well, it's funny because I was sitting with my lawyer like a couple days before, and I mentioned like we're going to be doing a wine tasting. He said, "Can I come?" I said, "Sure." So the bunch of us had a great old time that night. And sure enough, they got most of the wine list. Joe's a very knowledgeable gentleman. He's crazy, but
I,
in a
I
good
think I,
way.
I think I had him over for dinner. I don't know if it was when you were over with dinner too.
No, it's just the four of us, but Joe's a great guy.
Yeah. Um, Let me drip drop back a little bit. So you started off Brasserie de Paris here in Baltimore. So that's when you were sous chef or junior executive chef.
Yeah.
Was Genier's before that or Genier's afterwards?
Jeunier's was before that, because I had gotten out of culinary and gotten a job at, ready for this, Country Fair Inn.
Oh, that group. Okay.
Yeah, and with a French chef named Michel Audebert. And I was literally like 3 days out of Paris, and I saw their ad in the paper, and I went and I said, I want to work here. And Stuart Tepper, one of the owners at the time, said, and I wanted to work there very badly under the French chef. He said, "What do you want a year?" I said, "I'll take anything." He said, "Name a number." I said, $10,000 a year. This is in 1984. He said, "Our lowest starting price is 11,400, so we'll start you there." But then I learned a ton under Michel. I mean, he used to work at La Bagatelle down in Washington, D.C., that got turned into a parking lot. So then he came and was the executive chef. He started, he was the exec chef at the Country Fair after Roland Jeanier left. Because, of course, Roland was the longtime executive chef for that group. And when he left to start his own business, Michel was there. And then after the Country Fair was Jeanier's, and I was his pastry chef.
It
He
keeps
did.
on giving. Yeah. So I remember the conservatory, there was a French chef who opened that restaurant, and then it was you.
Hmm.
I don't remember his name, but
That was Michel Laudier.
I did have Michelle written somewhere. I said I thought his name was
Michel
Michelle.
Laudier, and he went to New York, and we talked. He called down to Peabody Court for a job reference or something, and we talked for quite a while, about a year after I started. And he was giving me the inside skinny on some of the stuff he knew about Peabody Court. But yeah, he was a very knowledgeable gentleman.
Yeah. Um, well, to tell people how we met, I used to run cooking classes in the restaurant kitchens, and this was before the Food Network, and people had not been in restaurant kitchens. And actually, the picture I did on the promo was a picture of me giving Michael a plaque for doing the class. And in going back, when we went to do the class, because it was Saturday morning, which it was very early, like 9 o'clock. I think the class started at
We were the only
9:30.
ones in the kitchens.
Right. And we were locked out.
I remember that. I had to
And
climb over the gate.
but but
They
the
had
chef,
they had around the Peabody Court Hotel was built around it was an old apartment building. So they retrofitted it. So in order to make the kitchen secure to the rest of the hotel, they put up these iron gates, and they only went up to about a foot and a half from the ceiling. But we had to get in. So
you had people coming, yeah.
we skinnied up over the gate and unlocked the door. That was in
Well,
our younger days, Dara.
well, do
It
you
was
are
a
you
great. I remember doing fouilleté béarnaise for one of the demos I did with you. Remember, we took the pastry and spread it very, very thin and very big, almost like a Danish, and smeared it with duck fat, and then rolled it up and cut it and baked it. Remember that? Fouilleté béarnaise.
I I know that once because you did another class for me when we were at Michael Gettier Orchard Inn
Mhm.
for the Epicurean Club. You did another one for me, but I don't remember. What I remember was the chef beforehand because I was paying to take some classes through a company out of California, and he did Dover sole and maybe salmon in a lattice work.
Mhm.
It was a crisscross.
Sure.
And then he did a gazpacho, and for heat, he added radishes. And to this day, I still use that recipe.
Oh, no kidding.
Yeah,
What is-
I have that one, and then I sort of Mexican it up a little bit and, throw in my little thing on it. Um, so where I've had the balls enough to have you over for dinner, I would do that because as long as I didn't cook in the chef's cuisine, I had
I
near
can't,
hungover and
I
I
can't,
cooked Italian.
I can't understand why people say this all the time. Like they say, "Oh, I'd never have you over for dinner." I just, I do remember one time I had made. This is when I was much younger, and when you're hanging around with your crew, and this is before I was married, and everybody had their girlfriends, and and I had made beef Wellington, and one of the gentlemen, Barrett Peterson, turns to his girlfriend, soon to be wife, and goes, God, Gay, why can't you cook like this? And she looked up at me like, you son of a.
Yeah.
She was, and yeah. So people are very hesitant many times to involve chefs in their dining experience.
Well, I think what they don't realize is sometimes they get home and they use hamburger helper. I mean, they're not eating like they are presenting in the restaurants. I
Mm,
just knew whatever their cuisine was, not to cook in that.
yeah.
So we go on with
Well,
that.
I've always said that there's several levels of cooking. There's the level that, like, I would serve in a restaurant. That's the highest level. You spend a lot of time
Mm.
tasting, making sure it's very, very carefully. Then there's a level of dining you would eat if you're out with a group of friends, right? And then there's the level of dining if you get invited over somebody's house, because no matter what that is, it's going to be good. I don't care if it's a zucchini casserole. You eat it, you love it because you're over somebody's house. You're having a great time, right?
Right.
The lowest level of dining is what the chef makes for himself. It could be you could tear the center out of a piece of bread and break an egg in it, and there you go. That's dinner. And you'd never serve it to anybody else, but you find yourself eating that when you go home at night. Yeah. So
And the you know, we've talked about where you started off, the conservatory, your restaurant on Broadway, the Orchard Inn, which was out in the county.
mhm.
And I think I worked for you on some sort of promotional PR thing,
I
something.
think
I can't remember what I did, but I know I did some work for you. Um, and what was it, Lauren? There was a girl, Lauren, who worked there
Oh
too.
yeah, that's right, Lauren. She was our PR person for a short time. Hmm. Hmm.
And I ended up going to work at the Manor Tavern in their catering department for a very short time. Uh,
That
but Lauren,
when Mr. Green still owned it, is it?
hmm
Yeah. I worked for him for a short time. Did you know that?
no,
Yeah, when I think it was after Jeanier's, he had put an ad in the paper. This is before I got my first chef's position. And he said, we need a chef. So I went and applied to him. And I quit Jeanier's and went to work for him. My first chef's position. I was so excited. What he didn't tell me is they were going to go into renovations the next month. He needed a chef for a month. And he went into renovations and everybody went home. And that was my experience with Mark Green.
well, we can go offline. I'll have a conversation with you. Uh, there are many stories that came out of there. We used to call it as the manor turns. Uh, but all right, so M. Gettier, and from Orchard Inn,
Hmm.
He went to Pierce's for a short period of time and then on to Antrim,
Hmm. Hmm.
where the, I think that's when you got the Chefs of the Year award.
That's right. I had been there about 7 years at that. Yeah.
So let's quickly, because we can talk forever, the 90s here in Baltimore. I'm just going to throw out the names. Ricardo Bossio, Soda Sopra,
Oh, yeah.
1996. I worked for him from probably 2005 to 2019 doing his PR and marketing.
Oh, no kidding. We had some great dinners there.
He's very unique. I love him and his family and
Yeah.
just whatever. So that was it. In 1996, he came across. He's 23 years old. He had worked as the chef for the Italian embassy, the Brass Elephant, part of that country fair group. Randy Stahl was doing the Brass Elephant.
Sure. Yeah.
We talked about Nancy Longo, who still has, well, I should say, Soda Sopra still exists on Charles Street. Nancy Longo has Pierpoint Restaurant, and that's on Alisana Street. So she's been there a long time. Cindy Wolf came in with Savannah,
Hmm. Hmm. The Admiral
uh,
fell in. I remember that.
right, and now Charleston.
We did that James Beard dinner together, right?
I don't remember. Fill me in.
Yeah, it was Cindy, myself, and the pastry chef from Pierpoint. We did a dinner up at James Beard. Yep, yep, yep. And we all did a course or two. Cindy and I did two courses each, and then the young lady that worked at Pierpoint did the dessert, blueberry fool with whipped cream. Hmm.
Mm, okay, I didn't know that. Mark Henry,
Oh,
familiar name.
sure. I saw Mark Henry not too long ago. He dropped by. He was up from the Eastern Shore visiting Baltimore, and I happened to chat with him. He's doing great down there.
Oh, he's still there, like Kent Island.
He stopped in 2016, I'm going to say. He retired in, I believe it was 2016. Yeah. But he was down in Kent Island until then. And then he was doing a lot of catering because the restaurant wasn't doing as fabulous as the catering side
There are pluses and minuses to both, that's for
was.
sure. Um, Spike Jurdy with Spike and Charlie.
Sure. How about that?
Yeah, and then Spike did got the James Beard.
Yeah.
John Shields,
Sure. At Gertrude's.
Gertrude's.
Yeah.
We mentioned Gina Troia, which was Troya's out in Towson, which was presenting Italian food beyond what we know as the red sauce Italian food.
Sure. We did a little
Rudy,
Baltimore magazine shoot out of Troyes. They had they
and
had they had called me up one day and said, doing we're doing an article on where chefs eat in Baltimore." So I called up Gino and said, "How about if we come out and do a photo shoot at your restaurant?" Of course, he was like, "Hell yeah!" So we went out, and my son was about, I'm going to say 4 or 5 at the time. I still have the pictures, obviously, from the magazine, but he was in the photo shoot too. It was very cute. We had a great time. But then Gino opened down in Fells Point and
yeah,
had two successful restaurants down there. He had
he
the restaurant and the other one.
and now he has in Hamden. He
Yeah,
has a place. Yeah,
well,
well, it's a
that's right. In
pasta
Hamden,
place.
not in Fells Point. In Hamden, you're right.
Yeah,
You're
yeah. Rudy Speckcamp, Rudy's 2000,
sure. He used to come
and
out at Antrim with his daughter because his daughter really liked foie gras. And Antrim was one of the few places in town that still served foie gras.
I love foie gras too. But
Well,
uh,
here it's illegal. You can't serve it in a restaurant in California.
well, there was. who was it? Ariane Dagon, if you want to
Sure,
talk, you know,
sure. From D'Artagnan.
D'Artagnan. Right, right. I remember we had set up doing an American Institute of Wine and Food event that had foie gras and was advertised. And then the PETA came in,
Oh,
a whole big stink.
yeah.
And we did secretly, we moved it to another restaurant and had it.
Oh, no kidding. That's great. God bless you.
Somehow or another, I mean, all I know is it was a big kufa. And let's see, Harbor Court, Michael Rourke.
Yeah.
I'm trying to think if I'm missing anybody else in that.
I remember back in the glory days, it was the two Michaels because Michael Rourke was the exec chef at Harbor, and I was the exec chef at Peabody.
And
I'll
yeah,
tell you what
that's
the disparity was between our two hotels. Besides the fact that they had 8 times the number of rooms, we had a clientele. We had a client that came in one time and said, "I would like some caviar," and I was like, I mean, same day. And I was like, we don't have any caviar, gosh. So I called up Michael Rourke and I said, Michael, I need a favor. Do you have any caviar? I need some caviar. He said, I'm down to 6 types, but I might be able to help. So actually, his sous chef at the time, I forget her name. Remember, she became chef. Her
right.
sous a great young lady, very skillful. She ran over two tins of caviar to Peabody Court Hotel just for us, so we could serve to our guests. So
Um, I'm trying to think. I know who she was, and I got her on TV, and I'm trying to think. Um, if there was a weather person who didn't know anything about food, and all I remember, she did something, and he says, "Can you really do that?" And she looked at him on TV, and she says, "Are you living under a rock?"
I,
And I cringed. I just cringed
I
when
was doing a thing on early morning TV once, and it was a little demo, and I had an onion, because I always like to leave a couple of things cut up so you could see, you have a little action there. So I real quick dice the onion, and the newscaster turns to me and whispers in my ear, "We're on live TV. Don't do that." He didn't want me cutting my finger open on live TV. They didn't want to see any cutting. They didn't want to do that.
well, um, I have one more question, and then we're going to go to my regular ones. What is Mrs. Reed's salad?
Mrs. Reed salad is probably the single most popular salad I have ever served. Mrs. Reed was our neighbor when I was growing up. And every year, my mom would make me this salad on my birthday because it was my favorite thing. You want to know what it is?
Mm-hmm.
It's great. You take iceberg lettuce and you break it up into like 2 square-inch pieces, and then you lay it in a baking dish, and then you layer a layer of mayonnaise over top of it, and then you sprinkle grated Parmesan cheese over the top of. Oh, first go the peas, then you sprinkle a copious amount of peas, then the grated Parmesan cheese. The instructions I have from Mrs. Reed are the more the better. And then you let it sit for about 6 hours. And then you can cut it like a lasagna and serve it in squares. Mrs. Reed salad. And we had multiple groups coming up to Antrim, like corporate groups, and they would say, "We want Mrs. Reed salad when we come up."
Okay, so iceberg lettuce, cut in squares. Think that you're going to do it in a like
Carrot
a
and spinach.
baking
Yeah, like a nine by 11 or
by
whatever.
9 by 13,
Yeah, 9 by 13.
and then peas,
And then
cooked
mayonnaise,
peas,
first mayonnaise, good layer of mayonnaise,
good layer of mayonnaise, then
peas,
peas,
right?
fresh
Peas,
peas,
fresh pea or frozen peas, thawed frozen peas is fine.
frozen peas,
And then copious
Parmesan.
yeah, and then let it sit for about 6 hours. And it just becomes a wonderful mass of yumminess.
Okay.
It's
I'm
sort of
a,
like if somebody explained to you a bacon, lettuce, tomato sandwich, and you said, "Why does that taste so good?" Bacon, you could you'd have to taste it. Same with Mrs. Reed's salad. I tell people the recipe, they're like, "That doesn't sound very good," but it was our most requested salad ever.
hmm,
How'd you hear about Mrs. Reed's salad?
I do a deep dive. I go back, and check out articles and things, and I went, I don't remember that.
Yeah.
All right, let's get to these questions because my juice is probably going to run out on my phone because it didn't get totally charged. What was your ultimate culinary fail?
I guess I can share this secret with you, right?
Yes, I wouldn't tell anyone.
Jeez. When I was working, when that chef from Taiwan was over, we were doing a mixed seafood plate, and we had a bucket of oysters. And the game plan, unbeknownst to me, was to take them one by one and dip them in the water, warm water, and put them on the plate. And the chef said, oysters. And I took the bucket of oysters and emptied them into a hot steam table. And they went and shriveled into little nuggets of overcooked oysters, which then I had to watch the chef put onto plates with the worst look on his face I've ever seen on any chef's face. He looks up. When I dumped him in the water, he looks up and goes, "Do you have any more?" And I said, "No, that was it." And he sort of went, "Oh."
I'm sorry.
Next
I
question.
keep.
It's and
Um,
that was in 1992, and I immediately knew what it was when you asked me that question.
okay. If you wake up tomorrow morning with a new talent, what would the new talent be?
To be able to saute foie gras without it melting.
Okay.
No,
You
you
could
know
go
what I'd
back.
like to do, in all seriousness? I'd like to know how to surf, because here in Santa Barbara, I don't surf. If I could surf, I think that would be wonderful.
Well, the fact that you ride on a motorized
Unis
unicycle
Well,
and
that's
film it.
and I take it down the beach 4 or 5 times a week.
Okay. If you could go back to your 18-year-old self and give yourself a piece of advice, what would it be?
It's gonna be okay.
All right. What's the best bite you've had all week?
The best bite?
Bite. Bite.
Mm. You know, I I don't mean to blow my own horn, but last night we had deep fried eggplant parmesan with pesto cream cheese, and for years it's been one of my favorites. And I love taking that round of I mix breadcrumb half and half with parmesan cheese and bread those baby eggplant with it and then deep fry them and then mix pesto and cream cheese and then smear it on and eat it just like that. That's probably the best thing I've had all
Mm. You can toot your horn. I won't tell anyone.
week.
What are two musts that must be in the refrigerator?
What are two what?
Two things that always have to be in your refrigerator.
Gosh. At the moment, two of my favorite things are XO sauce. Do you know XO sauce?
The Chinese sauce,
The
yes.
Chinese sauce. And we have salad just about every night. So I'm going to have to say uh, lettuce. Now, I have a caveat. If you ask my wife, she would say avocado. So between lettuce and avocado, that's a nightly thing.
Okay. Um, What didn't I ask you that I probably should have?
Mm,
Any last thoughts about being in Baltimore and being a chef that you want to pass on, or are we good? And I'm going to have a conversation afterwards. We'll talk about
Well,
the
I,
matter.
I can say that you've touched on most of it, but the 90s, being a chef in the late 80s and early 90s, the sense of discovery and all the newness that was coming up, it's hard to rival.
It was, I don't, we're not seeing the same type of camaraderie, or I'm not, it was a different time.
It was a,
What
and
was,
you know, when the Zagat used to come out, and the first thing you did was, of course, look at your scores. The second thing I did was look at Nancy's scores. Then I'd look at Michael Rourke's scores, and then maybe, you know, yeah. I don't know if it's like that anymore.
no, but it's a different time. And what was it? The Tale of Two Cities, something they start off. It was the best of times, it was the worst of times. And before I forget, we left off with you at the Antrim, but you started a frozen food company called Kerfuffle,
Uh-huh.
and it was vegetarian, and that has its own story. And maybe we'll do a part two. I don't know. But thank you for being on the show and catching up. And if
Thank
you
you, Dara.
want, I am going to call you after this, and we're going to talk about the Manor Tavern. Just
Sounds
I
good.
can't do it on air.
I'm looking
Thank you.
forward to it.
Okay. Thank you so
And
much, Michael. I have a
good.
couple of announcements, and then I'm going to call Michael and give him all the gossip.
Thanks, Tara.
You're welcome.
Okay.
Next week, we are heading to Cowtown. That is Calgary, Alberta, Canada, where my guest will be Chef Liana Roborek, one of Canada's distinguished leaders in the culinary industry. Best known as Chef Liana, her philosophy is food is the fabric of community, weaving people together across cultures and generations. Food is more than sustenance, it is a universal language that unites, uplifts, and connects us to what truly matters: community, care, and connection. If you are a Top Chef fan and you watched last season, you know that it was filmed in Calgary, and there's a lot to learn about the culinary landscape up there. So do join us next Thursday. If you need to reach me, my Instagram is at Dara Cooks. I'm on Facebook. There's a page called The Food Enthusiast. Of course, you can go to jmoreliving.com. And if you go to the menu under food, you'll see The Food Enthusiast. And when you go there, you can see all the past shows. There's also a link to click in for our bi-monthly newsletter, food newsletter, with recipes and videos and stories about food that might even go beyond the Baltimore area. So sign up for that. It's free. All our shows are immediately archived in video form on Jmore Living's Facebook page and jmoreliving.com. We truly appreciate it when you share our show with friends and family. Feel free to go back into our archives and enjoy past shows. May your plates always, always remain full. Look forward to